Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, we're diving deep into one of the most tragic, brutal, and compelling stories in all of manga and anime history. The tale of a man born into darkness, forged by violence, and defined by his refusal to give up even when the entire universe seemed aligned against him. This is the story of Guts, the Black Swordsman, the struggler who defies fate itself. So settle in, get comfortable, and let me take you through the complete journey of a character who has become an icon of perseverance, suffering, and the indomitable human will. This is a tale that spans from the moment of his horrific birth to his ongoing quest for vengeance and redemption. A story of blood, steel, friendship, betrayal, and the desperate fight to remain human in a world filled with demons. Let's begin at the very beginning, in the darkest possible way. Picture a medieval battlefield strewn with corpses and soaked in blood. A tree stands against the grey sky, and from its branches hang the bodies of the executed, left to rot as warnings to others. Ravens circle overhead, their caws cutting through the silence. Among those hanging bodies is a woman, dead from plague. Her life extinguished before she could even hold her newborn child. But beneath that corpse, in the shadow of death itself, something impossible happens. A baby cries. Not stillborn, not dead, but alive. Born from a mother's corpse, dropped to the blood-soaked ground below, this child enters the world in the most brutal way imaginable. No warmth, no comfort, no loving embrace. Only cold earth, the stench of death, and the harsh reality of a merciless world. This is how Guts enters existence. Not with hope or joy, but with suffering and solitude. He is literally born from death, and this beginning will mark him forever. The circumstances of his birth are not just tragic, they're prophetic, foreshadowing a life that would be defined by struggle, loss, and an almost supernatural resilience in the face of overwhelming darkness. By chance, a band of mercenaries happens upon this ghastly scene. Among them is a young woman named Shisu, who hears the infant's cries and discovers him beneath his mother's hanged corpse. Against all odds, she decides to take the child in, to raise him as her own. For the first 3 years of his life, Guts knows something resembling maternal care, a brief flicker of warmth in what would become a lifetime of cold brutality. But even this small mercy is short-lived. At age 3, Guts watches as Shisu succumbs to illness, dying in the same plague-ridden world that claimed his birth mother. Now he is truly alone, left in the care of the mercenary band's leader, a man named Gambino. And while Gambino would become the closest thing to a father figure in Guts' young life, he would also become the source of some of his deepest psychological wounds. The world of Berserk is medieval in setting, but far darker in tone than any real historical period. It's a world where might makes right, where mercenaries sell their swords to the highest bidder, and where the lives of common folk are worth less than the steel used to end them. Into this world, Guts is thrust with no protection, no privilege, and no reason to expect anything but hardship. From the moment Shisu dies, Guts' childhood becomes a crucible of violence and survival. He grows up on battlefields, surrounded by grizzled warriors who show little tenderness and less mercy. The smell of blood becomes familiar. The sounds of clashing steel and dying men become his lullaby. This is his education, his upbringing, his entire world. And yet, even in this brutal environment, there exists a strange sort of family. The mercenary band, despite its roughness, operates as a unit. Men rely on each other in battle, share their meals, and tell stories around campfires. For a child like Guts, these warriors become his entire social world. He observes them, learns from them, and gradually begins to understand what it means to survive in a world that offers no guarantees. At the impossibly young age of 6, Guts begins his true education in the way of the sword. Gambino, recognizing that a child in a mercenary band must learn to defend himself or die, starts training the boy in combat. This isn't gentle instruction or careful mentorship. This is harsh, practical training designed to create a soldier, not nurture a child. The sword placed in young Guts' hands is far too large for him, almost comically oversized for a 6-year-old. But Gambino doesn't care about what's appropriate. He cares about results. And so Guts learns, his small hands gripping steel that should be beyond his ability to wield, his young body pushed beyond what should be its limits. The training is brutal. Gambino shows no special mercy because Guts is a child. If anything, he's harder on the boy than he might be on an adult recruit. Every mistake is punished. Every moment of weakness is criticized. Guts learns to fight not through encouragement and positive reinforcement, but through pain and the fear of further pain. Yet despite the harshness, Guts proves to be a natural. His body, though young, seems built for combat. He's stronger than he should be, more resilient than seems possible. Perhaps it's genetics, or perhaps it's simply that a child born from death itself carries something unique in his blood. Whatever the reason, Guts excels at violence in a way that both impresses and disturbs those around him. By the time he's 8 years old, Guts is participating in actual battles, not as a page or a servant, but as a fighter. He wields his oversized sword with increasing proficiency, cutting down enemies who underestimate the dangerous child before them. Each battle adds more scars to his young body, more nightmares to his sleep, more trauma to his already damaged psyche. But Gambino, for all his harsh training, is not simply a cruel taskmaster. There are moments, rare but present, where something like pride shows in his eyes when he watches Guts fight. Moments where the man who adopted this orphan seems to actually care about the boy's development. These glimpses of approval become the closest thing to love that young Guts knows, and he craves them desperately, training harder, fighting fiercer, always seeking to earn Gambino's recognition. Then comes the night that destroys everything. Guts is 9 years old. The mercenary band has made camp after another successful raid. The men are drinking, celebrating their victory and the coin they've earned. Guts is asleep in his tent, exhausted from the day's fighting, when he's awakened by a figure entering his space. The man's name is Donovan, one of Gambino's soldiers, and what happens next is one of the most disturbing and tragic moments in Guts' young life. Gambino, in a moment of drunken callousness or perhaps desperate poverty, has sold Guts to Donovan for a single night. 3 silver coins. That's what Gambino valued the boy's innocence at. The assault that follows is something Guts' mind will never fully process or heal from. This violation, this ultimate betrayal by the one person who was supposed to protect him, creates a psychological wound that will never fully close. From this moment forward, Guts becomes extremely sensitive to being touched by others. His body remembers the trauma even when his conscious mind tries to bury it. When the night ends and Donovan leaves, Guts is left alone with his pain and confusion. He doesn't fully understand what happened or why. He only knows that something fundamental has been taken from him, that the world is even crueler than he'd already learned it to be. The next time Guts encounters Donovan is on the battlefield. In the chaos of combat, far from prying eyes, Guts attacks the man who violated him. The fight is not between equals. Donovan is a grown warrior and Guts is a child. But Guts fights Teats with a desperation and fury born from his trauma. And in the end, through a combination of skill, rage, and perhaps luck, Guts kills him. It's his first kill that matters, his first act of agency in a life where he's had no control. But the relief he expects doesn't come. There's no healing in this vengeance, no restoration of what was taken. There's only more blood on his hands and the hollow realization that violence, while sometimes necessary, cannot undo trauma. Gambino's drinking grows worse after that night. Whether from guilt over what he allowed to happen to Guts, or from his own demons entirely unrelated to the boy, Gambino spirals. He loses his leg in battle, a catastrophic injury for a mercenary that effectively ends his fighting career. And in his pain and bitterness, he turns his rage toward Guts. One night, drunk and delirious with fever from his infected wound, Gambino attacks Guts. Through his drunken ramblings, he reveals things that cut deeper than any blade. He tells Guts that he blames the boy for Shisu's death, that her love for the child weakened her and made her vulnerable to illness. He says that Guts has brought him nothing but misfortune, that the boy is cursed, that he should have died beneath his mother's corpse where he was born. The words are daggers, each one piercing whatever fragile sense of worth Guts has built up. And then Gambino tries to kill him. The man who raised him, who trained him, who gave him purpose, now wants him dead. The fight that follows is desperate and ugly. Guts, even at age 11, is already a formidable fighter. But this is different. This isn't facing an enemy soldier or a bandit. This is defending himself against the only father figure he's ever known. Every parry, every dodge, every counterattack comes with emotional weight that no amount of training prepared him for. In the end, when Gambino lunges for a killing blow, Guts reacts on instinct. His sword finds flesh. Gambino falls. And as the man who raised him lies dying in the dirt, Guts realizes what he's done. He's killed Gambino. Self-defense or not, justified or not, he's ended the life of his adoptive father. The emotional aftermath is devastating. Guts doesn't feel triumph. He doesn't feel vindicated. He feels lost. Despite everything, despite the abuse, despite the betrayal, despite the violence, Gambino was his anchor to the world. And now that anchor is gone. The mercenary band, seeing what happened, turns on Guts. They see only a boy who killed their leader, not the complex tragedy of what led to that moment. Guts has to flee, hunted by the very men he'd fought alongside. At 11 years old, he becomes a wandering mercenary himself, alone in a brutal world with only his sword and his scars for company. For the next 4 years, Guts drifts from battlefield to battlefield, from mercenary company to mercenary company. He's a sword for hire, nothing more, fighting for whoever will pay him. He doesn't make friends. He doesn't form bonds. He simply survives one day at a time, his heart hardened by loss and betrayal. He grows during these years, not just in skill, but in body. By 15, Guts stands at an imposing height, built like a man despite his youth. His strength is remarkable, his skill with a blade unmatched by most fighters twice his age. But there's a coldness to him, an emptiness. He's a warrior without purpose beyond survival, a weapon without a true wielder. Until one day, everything changes. Guts is hired by yet another mercenary company, one he expects to be like all the others. But this one is different. This one is led by a man named Griffith, known as the White Hawk, whose ambition and charisma have forged a formidable fighting force known as the Band of the Hawk. Griffith is everything Guts is not. Where Guts is rough and practical, Griffith is refined and strategic. Where Guts fights for money and survival, Griffith fights for a dream. Where Guts is dark-haired and scarred, Griffith is almost ethereal in his beauty, with flowing white hair and an bearing that seems more suited to nobility than mercenary life. The two meet on a battlefield. Guts has just defeated Bazuso the Grey Knight, a massive warrior who wore full plate armor and wielded an enormous sword. The fight made Guts' reputation, as Bazuso was considered nearly invincible. Watching this display of strength, Griffith becomes intrigued. Later that night, as the mercenary companies celebrate, Griffith approaches Guts with an offer to join the Band of the Hawk. Guts refuses. He works alone, always has, always will. Bonds just lead to betrayal and pain. Better to remain solitary. But Griffith doesn't accept this refusal. Instead, he challenges Guts to a duel. If Griffith wins, Guts must join his band. If Guts wins, he can go wherever he pleases. It seems like an easy choice. Guts is confident in his abilities, and this nobleman playing at being a mercenary shouldn't be much of a challenge. The duel that follows is a revelation. Griffith moves with a grace and precision that takes Guts by surprise. His saber work is elegant but deadly, each movement economical and purposeful. Where Guts relies on strength and endurance, Griffith relies on speed and technique. It's a clash of fighting philosophies as much as a clash of blades. And Guts loses. Griffith disarms him. his saber held to Guts's throat, and claims victory. According to the terms of their wager, Guts now belongs to the Band of the Hawk. For the first time since Gambino's death, Guts finds himself bound to someone else's will. And something about this feels different. Something about Griffith's confidence, his dream, his unshakable certainty of purpose, awakens something in Guts that he thought was long dead. The next morning, Guts wakes in the Band of the Hawk's camp, and his new life begins. Initially, Guts is resistant to integration. He doesn't want friends. He doesn't want to care about these people. Caring means vulnerability, and vulnerability leads to pain. But the Band of the Hawk isn't like the mercenary groups he's known before. There's genuine camaraderie here, actual loyalty between the warriors. One of the first people Guts meets is Casca, the only female fighter in the band, and one of Griffith's most trusted commanders. She's immediately hostile to Guts, seeing him as someone who will steal her position at Griffith's side. She's devoted to Griffith with a fierce loyalty that borders on worship, and this outsider who defeated Bazuso and immediately got Griffith's attention threatens her place. Their initial encounters are antagonistic. Casca questions Guts' skill and his worth. Guts, in turn, doesn't understand her devotion to Griffith or why she seems to need the White Hawk's approval so desperately. But over time, as they fight side by side, as they face danger together, something begins to shift. Guts also meets the other key members of the band. Judo, a former circus performer turned warrior whose throwing knives are as quick as his wit. Pippin, a gentle giant of a man whose massive frame hides a surprisingly kind heart. Caucus, ambitious and somewhat cowardly but loyal when it counts. Rickert, a young boy learning the ways of war under the protection of older warriors. Each of them welcomes Guts in their own way, and slowly, despite his resistance, Guts begins to feel something he hasn't felt in years: belonging. The Band of the Hawk becomes more than just a mercenary company. It becomes something approaching family. At the center of it all is Griffith, whose dream drives them forward. Griffith doesn't just want to be a mercenary captain. He wants to have his own kingdom, to rise from his low-born origins and claim a castle, an army, true power. It's an impossible dream by any reasonable standard. Mercenaries don't become kings. But Griffith's absolute conviction makes it seem not just possible, but inevitable. And Guts finds himself drawn into this dream, not because he cares about castles or power, but because he cares about Griffith. For the first time since Gambino, Guts has someone he looks up to, someone whose approval he seeks. The dynamic is different than with his adoptive father. Griffith shows genuine appreciation for Guts' abilities, actually seems to value him as a person rather than just a tool. Under Griffith's leadership, the Band of the Hawk achieves victory after victory. They become renowned throughout the Kingdom of Midland, their reputation growing with each successful campaign. The kingdom is locked in a seemingly endless war with the neighboring empire of Tudor, a conflict that has raged for over 100 years with no clear victor. Guts proves invaluable in these campaigns. His strength and skill on the battlefield are unmatched, and Griffith recognizes this by promoting him to captain of the Raiders, a special unit assigned to handle the most dangerous and difficult missions. It's a position of great responsibility, and Guts rises to meet it. For 3 years, Guts serves in this capacity, and they are perhaps the best years of his life. He has purpose beyond mere survival. He has companions who respect him and whom he respects in return. He has Griffith's dream to strive toward, and slowly, almost without realizing it, he has something more. Casca's hostility toward him has evolved. Through countless battles where they've protected each other, through shared hardships and small moments of vulnerability, animosity has transformed into something deeper. They're still antagonistic at times, their interactions charged with tension, but it's a different kind of tension now. The shift happens gradually. A battle where Guts saves Casca's life. A conversation around a campfire where they reveal pieces of their pasts. A moment where Casca tends to Guts' wounds and their eyes meet. Neither of them is particularly skilled at emotional vulnerability. They're warriors who've learned to keep their guards up, but something is building between them, undeniable and powerful. The Band of the Hawk's greatest triumph comes with the recapture of the fortress of Doldry. This strategic stronghold has been held by Tudor for decades, and its fall effectively ends the 100-Year War in Midland's favour. The battle is fierce and bloody, with casualties on both sides running into the thousands. But the Band of the Hawk, and Guts in particular, prove instrumental in the victory. When the fortress falls and the war ends, the King of Midland elevates Griffith and his commanders to nobility. The White Hawk becomes the White Phoenix General. The Band of the Hawk is formally knighted as Midland's White Phoenix Knights. For a moment, it seems like Griffith's dream is within reach. They've gone from being common mercenaries to being recognized nobility, celebrated as heroes of the kingdom. There's a grand celebration at the palace. The members of the band, unused to such finery and formality, attend in borrowed noble clothing. Guts finds himself at a ball, surrounded by aristocrats and courtiers, completely out of his element. He's a warrior, not a noble, and the politics and social games of the court are foreign to him. It's at this celebration that he sees Casca in a dress for the first time. She cleans up well, her hair styled instead of tied back for battle, her warrior's body fitting into feminine clothing in a way that takes his breath. In that moment, seeing her smile and laugh in this environment, Guts realizes that what he feels for her goes beyond camaraderie or even friendship. And Casca, seeing Guts in formal attire, his usual intensity softened slightly by the unfamiliar surroundings, feels something similar. The tension between them reaches a breaking point, though neither quite knows how to address it. They're warriors, not lovers. Violence they understand. Vulnerability is far more frightening than any battlefield. But beneath the celebration, there are troubling undercurrents. Griffith, now granted access to the nobility he's always aspired to join, becomes closer to Princess Charlotte, the king's daughter. The princess is taken with the handsome and charismatic White Hawk, and Griffith, ever strategic, encourages her affection. This is his path to greater power after all. Casca watches this with barely concealed distress. She's devoted herself to Griffith, loved him from afar for years, and seeing him with the princess cuts deep. Guts notices her pain and feels a complex mixture of emotions, sympathy for her suffering, and perhaps something like hope that her affections might turn elsewhere, might turn toward him. It's during this period of triumph that cracks begin to show. Guts overhears a conversation between Griffith and a courtier. In it, Griffith speaks about what defines a true friend, suggesting that a friend is someone who fights for their own dream rather than following someone else's. The words stick with Guts like a thorn. He realizes that for all his growth, for all his achievements, he's still just following Griffith's dream. He doesn't have his own purpose, his own goal. He's a sword in someone else's hand. Admittedly a well-treated and valued sword, but still just a tool for someone else's ambition. This realization gnaws at him. Everything he's accomplished has been in service to Griffith's dream. What does Guts want? What is his purpose? These questions, once awakened, refuse to be silenced. The decision doesn't come easily. Guts loves the band of the Hawk. It's the first real family he's had since childhood. He respects and admires Griffith more than anyone he's ever known. And there's Casca, with whom something profound and unspoken is developing. Leaving means abandoning all of this. But the need to find his own path, to become someone worthy of standing beside Griffith as an equal rather than a subordinate, ultimately proves stronger than his desire to stay. If he truly wants to be Griffith's friend in the way Griffith described, someone pursuing their own dream, then he must leave. Guts makes his decision. He will leave the band of the Hawk, set out on his own, and discover what he truly wants from life. It's one of the hardest choices he's ever made, but it feels necessary. When Griffith learns of Guts' intention to leave, he doesn't take it well. Despite his previous words about friendship requiring individual dreams, he seems affronted by Guts' decision. The White Hawk, so confident and in control in all other areas, shows something rare, genuine emotional reaction. Griffith challenges Guts to another duel. The terms are similar to their first fight. If Griffith wins, Guts must stay. If Guts wins, he goes free. But this duel is different from their first. Both fighters have grown in skill since then. Both have more at stake now, and the emotional weight of their relationship hangs heavy over every clash of their blades. The fight is intense, far more evenly matched than their first encounter. Guts has grown immensely as a warrior, and he fights not just with skill, but with desperate determination. Griffith fights with a fury that surprises even himself, his usual elegant composure cracking as the duel progresses. In the end, Guts' blade shatters Griffith's saber. He wins. According to the terms of their agreement, he's free to leave. But there's no joy in this victory. Looking at Griffith's shocked face, seeing the White Hawk truly defeated for perhaps the first time, Guts feels no triumph. Only a complex mixture of sadness, guilt, and determination. Before leaving, Guts has one final conversation with Casca. She's furious with him for abandoning them, for abandoning Griffith, for abandoning her. Their argument is heated, both of them saying things they'll later regret. But underneath the anger, is something else. Hurt, longing, the unspoken feelings they've never quite managed to address. Guts tells her he's not leaving because he doesn't care, but because he cares too much. He needs to become someone worthy of being her equal, of being Griffith's true friend, rather than just his subordinate. Casca doesn't fully understand, but some part of her recognizes the truth in his words, even if she doesn't want to. And then Guts leaves. He walks away from the band of the Hawk, from Griffith's dream, from Casca, from everything that has given his life meaning for the past 3 years. He goes into the world alone, seeking his own path. What he doesn't know, what he couldn't possibly predict, is that this departure will set in motion a chain of events that will destroy everything he loves and transform him into something far darker than he ever imagined possible. Griffith doesn't handle Guts' departure well. In fact, he handles it catastrophically. For all his strategic brilliance and emotional control, the White Hawk is revealed to have a fundamental weakness. He needs to be in control, needs to be the center of his world, needs those he values to remain within his orbit. Guts leaving, actually defeating him, and then choosing to walk away, shatters something in Griffith. All his plans, all his carefully laid strategies, his entire path to power and kingship suddenly feel hollow. What is a kingdom worth if those you truly value don't choose to be part of it? In this state of emotional vulnerability, Griffith makes a catastrophic mistake. He seeks comfort with Princess Charlotte, visiting her chambers one night. The princess, who has harbored feelings for Griffith, welcomes his advances. They spend the night together, but they're discovered. The king, already suspicious of Griffith's ambitions and alarmed by his closeness to the princess, learns of this transgression. For a commoner, even one elevated to nobility, to bed the kingdom's princess is a crime of the highest order. It's treason, an unforgivable violation of the social hierarchy. Griffith is arrested, and the punishment for his crime is not execution. That would be too merciful. Instead, he's taken to the Tower of Rebirth, a hidden dungeon beneath the castle where the kingdom's worst criminals are sent to suffer before death. Here, Griffith is subjected to brutal, systematic torture. The band of the Hawk, now without either Guts or Griffith, falls into disarray. Casca tries to hold them together, takes on leadership in Griffith's absence, but it's a losing battle. Without their charismatic leader, without the White Hawk's dream to follow, many members desert. Some are hunted down by the kingdom's forces for their association with the traitor Griffith. Others simply lose faith and fade away. Within a year, the mighty band of the Hawk is reduced to a fraction of its former strength. Those who remain are the most loyal, the most devoted. Casca, Judeau, Pippin, Rickert, and a handful of others. They're fugitives now, hunted by the same kingdom they'd shed blood to defend. Casca becomes consumed by the need to rescue Griffith. She leads the depleted band on raids and missions to gather resources, always searching for information about where Griffith is being held. It's an all-consuming quest that pushes her to her limits and beyond. She's exhausted, desperate, holding on to the hope that saving Griffith will somehow make everything right again. When Guts returns after a year of wandering, he finds a very different situation than the one he left. The band is scattered, their fortunes reversed, and Griffith is in mortal danger. Despite having left to find his own path, Guts cannot turn his back on his former companions. Whatever his own feelings about finding his purpose, he still cares about these people. They're still his family. When he reunites with Casca, their encounter is charged with complex emotions. She's furious at him for leaving, blames him for Griffith's downfall. If Guts had stayed, maybe none of this would have happened. But she's also relieved to see him, desperately needing his strength for what they're about to attempt. The argument between them escalates. Casca is pushed to her breaking point, the stress and exhaustion of the past year catching up to her. In a moment of desperation, she nearly takes her own life, unable to bear the weight of responsibility and failure anymore. But Guts stops her. He saves her. And in that moment, something between them finally breaks open. All the tension, all the unspoken feelings, all the fear and longing come pouring out. They reconcile, not just as comrades, but as something more. That night, they finally acknowledge their feelings for each other and make love, cementing a bond that has been building since they first met. For one night, despite all the darkness surrounding them, they have something beautiful. They have each other. It's a moment of genuine human connection in a story that has known so little of it. The next day, they begin planning the rescue of Griffith. With the help of Princess Charlotte, who still harbors feelings for Griffith and is horrified by what her father has done, they infiltrate the Tower of Rebirth. It's a desperate mission with little chance of success, but they have to try. They can't abandon Griffith to his fate, no matter what it costs them. The Tower of Rebirth is a maze of horror, filled with the worst that humanity can inflict on itself. In the deepest, darkest cell, they finally find Griffith. What they find is almost unrecognizable. The man they rescue from the Tower of Rebirth is not the Griffith they knew. The White Hawk, once beautiful and charismatic, has been reduced to a broken shell. The torture has been systematic and cruel, designed not just to cause pain, but to destroy. Griffith's tongue has been cut out. His tendons have been severed. His body is emaciated, covered in scars and burn marks. He cannot speak, cannot walk, cannot hold a sword. The dream of having a kingdom, of rising from his low-born origins to claim power and prestige, is now impossible. The very hands that once wielded a blade with elegance are now useless, the fingers bent and broken beyond any healer's ability to repair. The charismatic voice that inspired loyalty is silenced. The beautiful face is scarred. When Guts and Casca see what has been done to him, the horror is overwhelming. This was their leader, their inspiration, the center around which their world revolved. And he's been reduced to this, a helpless invalid who can only communicate through desperate, pained sounds, and the agony in his one remaining eye. They manage to escape the tower and the kingdom, But there's no triumph in this rescue. They've saved Griffith's life, but they haven't saved him. The man they loved and followed is gone, replaced by someone who can barely be called alive. In the weeks that follow, as they travel with what remains of the band, the reality of their situation becomes clear. Griffith will never recover. He will spend the rest of his life as an invalid, dependent on others for even basic care. His dream is dead. Everything he fought for, every sacrifice he made, every strategic victory he achieved, all of it has come to nothing. For Casca and Guts, there's a painful question they can barely acknowledge. What now? They've dedicated themselves to Griffith and his dream for so long. But that dream is over. And while they still care about Griffith, still want to care for him, they also have feelings for each other. They have their own lives to live. One day, as Casca tends to Griffith's wounds, he manages to escape from the wagon where they're keeping him. His broken body drags itself to a nearby river. Everyone rushes to find him, fearing he might drown himself, unable to bear his current existence. They find him in the water, staring at his reflection. And in that reflection, Griffith sees not the White Hawk, not the beautiful and powerful leader he once was, but a ruined thing, a monster, a failure. The sheer horror and despair in his eye tells the entire story. He wishes he had died in that tower rather than live like this. It's in this moment of absolute despair, with his dream dead and his body broken, that Griffith notices something he's been carrying since his days as a mercenary, something that has always been with him but never activated before. The Behelit, the egg of the king. This mysterious object, shaped like a face with features scattered randomly across its surface, has always seemed strange but inert. Many in the band wondered what it was, but Griffith simply said he'd had it since childhood. Now, as Griffith's blood drips onto it, and his despair reaches its absolute nadir, the Behelit activates. The features on its surface rearrange themselves into a screaming face. The sky grows dark, and then the world itself seems to tear open. Reality fractures. Day turns to night in an instant, though it's not the darkness of evening, but something else, something wrong. In the sky, the sun begins to disappear, covered by an impossible eclipse. And from the shadows, creatures begin to emerge. Demons, apostles, monsters that should not exist. The members of the Band of the Hawk find themselves transported to a strange place, neither fully in the physical world nor entirely somewhere else. It's a nightmare realm, a dimensional space between realities, and they are surrounded. Hundreds of grotesque beings, each one a former human who sacrificed everything dear to them in exchange for demonic power, now stand witness to what is about to occur. 5 figures appear, towering over everything else. They are not quite corporeal, not quite real, but their presence is overwhelming. These are the God Hand, demonic beings of immense power who serve as agents of causality itself. Void, with his exposed brain and calm demeanor. Slan, taking the form of a seductive succubus. Conrad, silent and pestilent. Ubik, grinning and manipulative. 4 members of an ancient order that has shaped humanity's darkest moments. And now they speak to Griffith. They show him what his life has been, what his dreams were, what he has lost. They remind him of all the sacrifices he's already made, all the men who died following his ambition. They ask him, was it all for nothing? All those deaths, all that bloodshed, all those years of struggle, will they end with him as a crippled invalid, his dream dead, his life meaningless? Or will he sacrifice what remains? His band of the Hawk, these people who followed him, who loved him, who risked everything to save him, in exchange for power, in exchange for rebirth, in exchange for the chance to see his dream realized. The decision Griffith faces is impossible. These people are his comrades, his soldiers, perhaps even his friends. Casca has devoted herself to him for years. Guts, despite leaving, came back to save him. Judeau, Pippin, all of them. They're here because of their loyalty to him. But Griffith's dream has always been everything. His ambition has always come first. And in his current state, broken and hopeless, the chance to reclaim his dream is too tempting to resist. Griffith makes his choice. He accepts. He will sacrifice the Band of the Hawk. The moment he agrees, Void performs what is called the Invocation of Doom. Every member of the Band of the Hawk present suddenly finds a mark burning itself into their flesh, the brand of sacrifice. It marks them as offerings, as prey, as meat for the demons surrounding them. And then the slaughter begins. The apostles descend on the branded mercenaries like a tidal wave of teeth and claws. These warriors who have survived countless battles, who have faced armies and come out victorious, are torn apart. The Band of the Hawk, that legendary fighting force, is massacred. Judeau dies protecting Casca, taking injuries meant for her. His last words a confession of feelings he never found the courage to express in life. Pippin is overwhelmed, despite his great strength, his gentle nature. No match for the malicious force arrayed against them. Caucus's ambitions die with him. One by one, Guts watches his friends, his family, his comrades die in the most brutal ways imaginable. Guts tries to fight back. His sword swings desperately, cutting down demons, but for every one he kills, 10 more take its place. His body is wounded in dozens of places. He's fighting a losing battle, and he knows it, but he can't stop. He won't stop. To stop is to accept this nightmare as reality. He tries to reach Griffith, tries to stop this madness. But Griffith is changing. The God Hand's power flows into him, transforming him into something else, something demonic, something beyond human. Griffith is being reborn as Femto, the 5th member of the God Hand, completing the hand that has manipulated human history for centuries. And as Femto, the first thing the newly transformed demon does is demonstrate his contempt for his former life. He uses his new powers to call Casca to him, and there, in front of Guts, as the Black Swordsman watches helplessly, unable to move or intervene, Femto violates Casca. It is not simply an act of violence. It is a deliberate and calculated psychological torture aimed at both of them. At Casca, who devoted herself to Griffith for years, and is now defiled by what he's become. At Guts, who is forced to watch the woman he loves be violated, his body pinned by demons, unable to look away or prevent what's happening. Guts strains against the creatures holding him with such force that his left forearm is torn off. He claws at his own face in anguish, damaging his right eye. But even this self-mutilation cannot free him or stop what's happening. He can only watch, can only scream, can only experience absolute, complete helplessness, as everything he cares about is destroyed before his eyes. The eclipse seems to last forever, but eventually it ends. Or rather, it's interrupted. The Skull Knight, a mysterious figure in skeletal armor riding a supernatural steed, crashes into this nightmare realm. He's been searching for temporal junction points like this, moments where causality is vulnerable, and he's arrived to disrupt the God Hand's plans. He cannot defeat them. Their power is too great. But he can save 2 lives. He grabs Guts and the traumatized Casca and tears a hole back to reality, dragging them through dimensional barriers to safety. When Guts awakens, he's back in the physical world. His left arm is gone, replaced by a stump. His right eye is damaged beyond repair. His body is covered in wounds. But worst of all is his mind. The brand of sacrifice burns on his neck, a mark that will attract demonic creatures for the rest of his life. Every demon, every evil spirit, every monster will be drawn to him, will hunt him, will try to kill him. And Casca. Casca is broken. The trauma of what she experienced, of watching her friends die, of Femto's assault, has shattered her mind. She's regressed to a childlike state, unable to speak coherently, unable to remember who she is or who Guts is. She's lost in her own head, and Guts doesn't know if she'll ever come back. He's lost his arm. He's lost his eye. He's lost his friends. He's lost the woman he loves, even though her body still lives. Everything that gave his life meaning has been torn away in a single night of horror. And somewhere out there, Femto, exists. The being who was once Guts' greatest friend and who became his worst enemy. The demon who sacrificed everything Guts cared about to achieve a dream. In this moment, as Guts stands among the ruins of his life, something hardens in him. Something cold and dark takes root in his heart. He cannot bring back the dead. He cannot undo what has been done. But he can do one thing. He can have revenge. The Black Swordsman is born not in triumph, but in tragedy. Born not from strength, but from loss. Born not from hope, but from rage. And his war against the demonic is only beginning. In the aftermath of the eclipse, Guts finds himself in the care of Godot, a master blacksmith living in a remote mountain forge with his adopted granddaughter Erica and a young man named Rickett. Rickett was not present at the eclipse. He'd been left behind on an errand and is one of only 3 members of the Band of the Hawk to survive. When he learns what happened to his comrades, his grief is profound, but Guts' pain runs even deeper. Guts' body is broken. Beyond the missing arm and damaged eye, his wounds are extensive. But physical injuries heal eventually. What doesn't heal so easily is what the Eclipse did to his soul. He's haunted by nightmares. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees his friends being torn apart. He hears their screams. He sees Casca's face during Femto's assault. The brand of sacrifice only makes things worse. It attracts demonic entities constantly. Even in Godot's remote forge, monsters occasionally attack, drawn by the mark on Guts' neck. Sleep becomes dangerous. When he's unconscious, he's vulnerable to these attacks. So Guts learns to sleep lightly, if at all, always ready for violence. During his recovery, an apostle attacks the forge. This creature, massive and grotesque, breaks through Godot's defenses, threatening everyone there. Guts is still injured, still weak, but he forces himself to fight. His old sword shatters against the demon's hide, the weapon inadequate for the supernatural threats he now faces. It's then that Guts sees it. Propped against the wall of Godot's forge, covered in dust and seemingly forgotten, is an enormous sword. It's far too large to be practical, more a slab of raw iron than a refined weapon. Its appearance is crude, unrefined, almost primitive. Godot sees where Guts is looking and tells him the sword's story. Years ago, when Godot was younger and living in a castle town, a lord put out a request for a sword capable of killing a dragon. Godot, tired of crafting ornate decorative swords for nobles who cared more about appearance than function, saw this as a challenge. He forged the Dragon Slayer, a massive blade designed to hack through a dragon's scales and bones. But when he presented it, the lord was furious. The sword was too large, too heavy, completely impractical. No human could wield such a weapon effectively. It was a waste of materials, a blacksmith's folly. The lord threatened Godot's life for this failure. So the Dragon Slayer sat unused for decades, a monument to ambition that exceeded practicality. Until now. Guts grabs the sword. It's absurdly heavy, estimated to weigh around 400 pounds of pure iron. A normal man couldn't even lift it, let alone swing it in combat. But Guts is not a normal man. His strength has always been exceptional, and desperation gives him even more power. He hefts the Dragon Slayer and charges the apostle. The first swing nearly takes his remaining arm off. The momentum and weight are staggering. But the blade cleaves through the demon's flesh where his previous sword could only scratch. The second swing is better. The third, better still. And by the time the apostle falls dead, Guts has found his weapon. The Dragon Slayer is a perfect match for him. Like Guts, it's crude, brutal, and far too heavy to be wielded by anyone with normal strength or a normal will to live. Like Guts, it's been rejected as impractical, as too excessive, as a mistake. And like Guts, it's actually perfect for the impossible task ahead. Fighting demons and apostles, creatures that laugh at normal weapons. Godot, seeing Guts wield the Dragon Slayer successfully, tells him to take it. It's his now. The sword finally has someone who can use it, and Guts finally has a weapon suited to his needs. Over time, as Guts continues to hunt apostles and demons, the Dragon Slayer changes. Each creature it kills leaves a trace of malice on the blade. The sword is literally baptized in the blood of demons, soaking up their essence. This transforms it from a simple, if oversized piece of steel into something more. A weapon that exists partially in the supernatural realm, capable of harming even beings that should be beyond physical damage. Eventually, the Dragon Slayer becomes one of the few weapons that can actually wound members of the God Hand. When Guts later encounters Slan in the dimension of Qlipoth, he's able to damage her incarnated form with it, something that should be impossible. The sword has become as cursed as its wielder, transformed by the sheer amount of demonic blood it has spilled. Godot also crafts Guts a prosthetic arm. This isn't a simple wooden or metal replacement, but a sophisticated piece of engineering. The prosthetic includes a mechanism that allows Guts to magnetically attach the Dragon Slayer to his arm, helping him wield the massive blade despite having only one functional hand. More impressively, Godot builds a cannon into the prosthetic, the arm cannon, capable of firing powerful shots at close range. This prosthetic arm, combined with the Dragon Slayer, transforms Guts into something more than just a skilled swordsman. He becomes a one-man army, capable of taking on threats that would require multiple knights or even a small company of soldiers to defeat. The combination of his massive sword and ranged weapon makes him adaptable to different combat situations. But the weapons are just tools. What truly makes Guts dangerous is his mindset. The trauma of the Eclipse has hardened him into something cold and relentless. He doesn't fight for glory or even survival. He fights for revenge. Every apostle he kills is a small payment toward the debt Griffith owes him. Every demon destroyed is a tiny step toward the impossible goal of killing a member of the God Hand. As Guts continues his hunt for apostles, something dark grows within him. The constant violence, the never-ending stream of battles, the nightly attacks from demons drawn to his brand, and the weight of his trauma all begin to manifest as something tangible within his psyche. This entity is called the Beast of Darkness, though Guts himself doesn't fully understand what it is at first. It appears to him as a massive black dog or wolf-like creature, fanged and furious, always hungry for more violence. It speaks to him in his own voice, urging him toward greater brutality, toward abandoning any remaining humanity in favor of pure animalistic rage. The beast represents Guts' anger and bloodlust given form. It's the part of him that enjoyed killing, that felt satisfaction when his blade found flesh, that wants nothing more than to tear apart everything that hurt him. It's his trauma personified, his rage made manifest, his darkness given voice. Initially, Guts tries to suppress it, to control it, but the beast grows stronger with each battle, feeding on his fury and pain. It whispers to him constantly, especially in moments of stress or danger. It tells him to give in, to stop fighting his nature, to become the monster that the world has tried to make him. During this dark period, Guts is more beast than man. He hunts apostles with single-minded determination, caring nothing for collateral damage or innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. He's cold, distant, violent. The Black Swordsman lives up to his title, wandering from place to place, leaving death in his wake. This is when he meets Puck, a small elf with healing abilities and an annoyingly cheerful personality. Puck initially follows Guts out of curiosity, but stays because he sees something in the Black Swordsman that others miss. Underneath all the rage and violence, there's still a human being in pain. Puck becomes an unexpected companion, and more importantly, a conscience. His constant presence and questions begin to chip away at the walls Guts has built around himself. When Guts is ready to kill without mercy, Puck reminds him of other options. When Guts is drowning in his darkness, Puck's light, literally, as elves glow when in the presence of strong emotions, provides a counterbalance. But even Puck's influence isn't enough to fully reach Guts during these dark years. The beast continues to grow stronger. And then comes the moment that changes everything. Guts has been traveling with Casca, though their relationship is now tragic in its complexity. Casca, in her traumatized state, doesn't recognize him. Sometimes she's terrified of him, seeing in his scarred face reminders of the Eclipse. Other times she's drawn to him without understanding why. Guts protects her fiercely, but doesn't know how to reach her, how to bring back the woman he loves. One night, as they camp, Guts is overwhelmed by a particularly vicious assault from malicious spirits drawn to his brand. In his weakened state, exhausted from constant fighting and never enough sleep, something breaks inside him. The beast of darkness surges forward with unprecedented strength. In this state, more demon than man, Guts nearly kills Casca. He's on top of her, his hands around her throat, and for a moment the beast has complete control. It tells him to end her suffering, to stop being burdened by protecting someone who doesn't even remember him, to eliminate this distraction from his quest for revenge. But at the last second, Guts reasserts control. He releases Casca, horrified at what he nearly did. The realization of how close he came to becoming exactly what he's been fighting against, a monster without humanity, shakes him to his core. This moment becomes a turning point. Guts realizes that if he continues on this path alone, the beast will eventually win. He will become a creature defined only by rage and violence, losing everything that makes him human. He needs something to anchor him, some reason to stay human beyond revenge. He needs help, and he needs to help Casca. For years he's been dragging her around, protecting her body but doing nothing to heal her mind. He's been so consumed by revenge that he's neglected the one person from his old life who still survives. It's time to change that. This realization leads Guts to begin seeking information about how to restore Casca's mind. And in doing so, he begins to gather companions again. He begins to rebuild something like what he lost. Not a replacement for the band of the Hawk, but a new group with their own reasons for following the Black Swordsman. The first to join is Isidro, a young boy who dreams of becoming a famous swordsman. He sees Guts' skills and decides to follow him, much to Guts' annoyance. Isidro is brash, overconfident, and frequently more hindrance than help, but his determination reminds Guts of himself at that age. Despite his protests, Guts finds himself becoming something like a teacher to the boy. Then comes Farnese, a noble woman and the leader of the Holy Iron Chain Knights. She initially pursues Guts as a heretic and criminal, but circumstances force them together. Farnese has her own demons, a sheltered upbringing that left her uncertain and afraid, which she tried to hide behind religious fervor and noble arrogance. Through traveling with Guts, she begins to find real courage and purpose. Serpico, Farnese's half-brother and bodyguard, joins primarily to protect her. He's calm, calculating, and an excellent swordsman in his own right. Though he initially views Guts with suspicion, he comes to respect the Black Swordsman's strength and his genuine care for his companions, even if Guts rarely shows it openly. The most important addition to Guts' group is Shirka, a young witch apprentice. Her mentor, Flora, was an ancient and powerful magic user who understood much about the forces at work in the world. Through Flora, Guts learns about the Berserker armor and its terrible power. And through Shirka, he gains something invaluable, a tether to his humanity during his darkest moments. Flora gives Guts the Berserker armor, a cursed suit of armor that once belonged to the Skull Knight himself. This armor is incredibly powerful, but dangerous. When worn, it removes the body's natural limiters, the subconscious restrictions that prevent humans from using their full strength and potentially damaging themselves. With the Berserker armor activated, Guts becomes a nearly unstoppable force. His speed, strength, and endurance are pushed far beyond human limits. He can fight through injuries that would kill a normal person. He can battle for extended periods without tiring. He can defeat apostles that would otherwise be beyond his capabilities. But there's a terrible cost. The armor doesn't heal injuries. It uses metal pins and spikes to hold broken bones in place and puncture wounds closed, keeping the body functional at the cost of severe internal damage. Each use leaves Guts more damaged than before. The armor is literally killing him slowly, grinding down his body with every battle. Worse, the Berserker armor feeds on the user's rage and darkness. When Guts activates it fully, the Beast of Darkness takes over. He becomes a Berserker in the truest sense, a creature of pure violence that cannot distinguish friend from foe. In this state, he's attacked his own companions, nearly killing them before being brought back to himself. This is where Shirka becomes crucial. As a magic user, she can enter Guts' mind through astral projection. When he loses himself in the armor's Berserker rage, she dives into his consciousness and reminds him of who he is, giving him an anchor point to return to sanity. Without her, the armor would consume him completely. The relationship that develops between Guts and Shirka is reminiscent of a father and daughter, though neither would describe it that way. She's young and still learning about the world, but she's also remarkably wise and perceptive. She understands Guts' pain in ways that others don't, and she's not afraid to call him out when he's letting his darkness control him. Farnese, meanwhile, becomes Casca's primary caretaker. She tends to the traumatized woman with a gentleness and patience that surprises everyone, including herself. Through caring for Casca, Farnese finds a purpose beyond her noble upbringing. She becomes essential to the group, not as a warrior, but as a nurturer. Together, this strange collection of individuals becomes Guts' new traveling party. They're not the Band of the Hawk. They can never be that. but they're companions nonetheless, each with their own reasons for following the Black Swordsman, each bringing something valuable to the group. And slowly, despite his resistance, Guts begins to care about them. Not in the same way he cared about his old comrades, and certainly not enough to abandon his quest for revenge, but enough that he fights to protect them. Enough that their presence helps keep his humanity intact. The group's ultimate goal becomes clear: reach Elfhelm, a mystical island where powerful magic users reside. According to the Skull Knight and Flora, the sovereign of Elfhelm, the Flower Storm monarch, might have the power to restore Casca's shattered mind. It's a dangerous journey across oceans and through territories controlled by apostles and worse, but it's their only hope. To understand Guts' struggle, one must understand what he's fighting against. The God Hand are not simply powerful demons. They are embodiments of humanity's darkest desires and the executors of causality itself. There are 5 members, each representing a different aspect of human darkness. Void, the eldest, embodies cold logic without compassion. His exposed brain and calm demeanor make him seem almost philosophical, but he's responsible for countless tragedies throughout history. He's the one who performs the invocation of doom, marking sacrifices with the brand. Slan takes the form of a seductive succubus and embodies lust, pleasure in pain, and the corruption of desire. She's fascinated by the extremes of human emotion, finding beauty in suffering and perverse pleasure in violation. When she manifests in Califoth using troll intestines, she tries to tempt Guts into becoming an apostle, promising him power and an end to his pain. Conrad represents pestilence, decay, and the slow rot that consumes all things. He's largely silent, but his influence has brought plagues and famines to countless populations throughout history. His domain is misery and the degradation of the body. Ubik is the manipulator, the trickster who twists minds and perceptions. He specializes in psychological warfare, breaking down people's resistance to making sacrifices by showing them false hope or using philosophical arguments to make evil seem reasonable. His ever-present grin suggests he finds humanity's suffering amusing. And finally, Femto, formerly Griffith. The newest member represents ambition without limits, the willingness to sacrifice anything and everything to achieve one's dreams. He's the most active member in the physical world, having been incarnated through the horrific ceremony at the Tower of Conviction. The God Hand serves something even greater than themselves. Whether it's the controversial idea of evil from the removed chapter, or simply causality itself personified, they act as agents of a greater force. This force exists beyond the physical realm and manipulates the flow of fate to ensure that humanity's history unfolds in ways that create maximum suffering. This creates a terrible cycle. Human suffering feeds this greater force, which manipulates events to create more suffering, which feeds it further. The God Hand acts as the direct agents of this manipulation, orchestrating events across centuries to ensure the cycle continues. Guts' entire existence, according to this system, is predetermined. The eclipse wasn't a random tragedy, but a carefully orchestrated event. His suffering serves a purpose in the grand design. His rage, his quest for revenge, even his small victories, all of it flows along predetermined lines of causality. This is what makes Guts' struggle so profound. He's not just fighting demons or seeking revenge on Griffith. He's fighting against fate itself, against a universe that seems designed to ensure his suffering continues forever. The brand on his neck isn't just a mark that attracts demons. It's a symbol of how he's been chosen by this system as a perpetual victim. But Guts refuses to accept this. He's called the Struggler, not because he's destined to succeed, but because he refuses to stop fighting, even when success seems impossible. Every step forward is an act of defiance against causality. Every moment he maintains his humanity despite the armor's influence is a rejection of the role fate has assigned him. The Skull Knight, that mysterious figure who saved Guts from the Eclipse, represents what could happen if Guts fails to maintain his humanity. While his true identity has never been explicitly confirmed, there are strong indications that he was once a great king. Likely King Gyseric, the legendary ruler who united the land 1,000 years ago. The God Hand members refer to him as Your Majesty. His armor bears striking similarities to historical depictions of Gyseric's royal attire, and his age aligns with the fallen kingdom's timeline. Whatever his past, he was caught in an eclipse-like ceremony, lost everything he loved, and became consumed by his quest for vengeance against the God Hand, particularly Void. Now, after a millennium of fighting, the Skull Knight exists as something barely human, a soul trapped in armor, sustained by hatred and the desire for revenge. He's incredibly powerful, able to traverse dimensions and wield a sword forged from behelits that can cut through space itself. But what has he gained? His loved ones are still dead. His kingdom is long gone. He continues his war against the God Hand, but to what end? The Skull Knight sees in Guts a reflection of himself, a younger version walking the same path of revenge. He tries to warn Guts about the dangers ahead, about how the Berserker armor will slowly consume him, about how revenge is a path that leads only to more darkness. But he also helps Guts because he sees something in the younger warrior that he himself might have lost. The ability to still care about others, to still have connections that keep his humanity intact. The voyage to Elfhelm is long and dangerous, taking Guts and his companions across oceans and through territories controlled by various supernatural forces. Along the way, they face numerous challenges that test not just their fighting abilities, but their bonds with each other. They battle sea monsters, including a massive creature known as the Sea God, an apostle-like being that has terrorized sailors for generations. Guts, using the Berserker armor, descends into the creature's body to destroy it from within. A battle that nearly costs him his life, and would have if not for his companion's intervention. They navigate political intrigue in port cities where human ambition proves just as dangerous as supernatural threats. They witness the aftermath of Griffith's, now calling himself the Hawk of Light, growing influence as he builds his kingdom of Falconia and is hailed as humanity's savior. This last point is particularly bitter for Guts. While he struggles in obscurity, fighting to protect those close to him and battling demons, Griffith has become a beloved hero to the masses. The very being who sacrificed his comrades and committed unspeakable atrocities is now worshipped as humanity's guardian against the demonic threats that his own actions helped unleash when he triggered the great wave that merged the physical and astral worlds. Finally, after enduring countless trials, the group reaches Elfhelm. This mystical island exists partially outside normal reality, protected by powerful magic that keeps malevolent forces at bay. Here, time flows differently, and the constant threat of demonic attack is finally absent. For the first time since the eclipse, Guts can truly rest. The Flower Storm Monarch and the other magic users of Elfhelm examine Casca's condition. What they discover is that her trauma runs so deep that it's created a kind of fortress within her mind, a place where her true self has retreated to hide from the memories of the eclipse. To reach her and potentially restore her sanity, they'll need to enter this mental landscape. Through a complex magical ritual, Farnese and Shirka enter Casca's mind. What they find there is a surreal landscape made up of her memories and trauma, with the core of her true self locked away behind barriers of fear and pain. They navigate this mental world, experiencing fragments of Casca's past, her childhood, her time with the Band of the Hawk, her feelings for both Griffith and Guts. Eventually, they reach her. Through their efforts, with guidance from Elfhelm's powerful magic users, they manage to break through the barriers. Casca's fragmented psyche is brought back together. Her memories, including the traumatic ones, are restored. When she wakes, she's herself again. She can speak. She can remember. She's no longer the childlike shell, but Casca, the warrior, the woman who led the Band of the Hawk through its darkest year. But this restoration is not the happy ending Guts hoped for. When Casca sees him, the memories of the eclipse flood back, and associated with Guts in her traumatized mind are the memories of that horror. His face reminds her of what happened. His presence triggers panic attacks. This is the Skull Knight's warning come true. He'd told Guts that what Casca wanted might not be what Guts wanted. Guts wanted her restored, wanted her back. But Casca, now able to process her trauma, needs space from the very person who's been protecting her all this time. It's a crushing blow for Guts. He spent years protecting her, fighting to reach Elfhelm, doing everything possible to restore her mind. And now that he's succeeded, she can't bear to be around him. The woman he loves is back, but their relationship might be irreparably damaged by the shared trauma of the eclipse. While Guts struggles with his personal demons and works to restore Casca, Griffith has not been idle. Reborn as Femto and later incarnated in a human-like body through a dark ritual, Griffith has set about making his dream a reality in a way that only he could. He's gathered a new Band of the Hawk, but this one is very different from the original. Where the first band was composed of human mercenaries, united by camaraderie and Griffith's dream. This new band includes powerful apostles, demons in human form, who serve Griffith because he's a member of the God Hand. Nosferatu Zod, the legendary apostle warrior who has roamed battlefields for centuries, now serves as one of Griffith's commanders. Grunbeld, the Flame Dragon, an apostle whose released form is an enormous crystalline dragon, brings his tactical genius and immense power. Locus, Rakshas, and others, each one a being of terrible strength, have sworn loyalty to the Hawk of Light. But Griffith doesn't rely solely on demons. He also recruits humans, drawing them in with his charisma and the promise of a better world. Many remember the original Band of the Hawk and the legendary White Phoenix who ended the 100-Year War. When Griffith reappears and begins liberating Midland from various threats, he's hailed as a savior. The kingdom has fallen into chaos in the years since the Eclipse. The emperor of the Kushan Empire, Ganishka, has invaded and occupies much of Midland. Supernatural threats have multiplied exponentially. The common people live in constant fear, caught between human armies and demonic monsters. Into this chaos comes Griffith, the Hawk of Light, wielding impossible power to drive back both human invaders and supernatural threats. He defeats Ganishka's armies. He slays demons that terrorize villages. He brings order to lands that have known only fear. And in doing so, he builds Falconia, a magnificent city that serves as his capital, a place where humans can live safely behind walls that keep out the demonic threats. It's a utopia, or at least appears to be one. The people worship Griffith as their savior, as the one chosen by God to protect humanity. Even Princess Charlotte, now Queen of Midland, stands at Griffith's side, lending royal legitimacy to his rule. The Holy See, Midland's religious institution, blesses his reign. He's achieved everything he dreamed of: a kingdom, power, recognition, and the adoration of the masses. But this is all built on a foundation of blood and betrayal. Falconia exists because Griffith sacrificed the Band of the Hawk. His power comes from being a demon lord wearing a human face. The peace he provides is real, but it's a peace that came at the cost of everything Guts held dear. And Griffith knows exactly what he's doing. When Rickert, the sole survivor of the original band besides Guts and Casca, finally meets the reborn Griffith, he does something extraordinary. He slaps him. This young man, nowhere near Griffith's equal in power, hits him across the face and denounces him for his betrayal. Griffith's response is telling. He doesn't retaliate. He simply smiles and accepts it, showing that some part of him, however small, acknowledges what he did. But that doesn't change anything. He has his kingdom. He's achieved his dream, and he'll do whatever is necessary to maintain it. This creates a terrible irony in Guts' quest. He wants revenge against Griffith, wants to kill him for what he did. But Griffith is now seen as humanity's greatest protector. To attack him would be to attack the hope of countless people who see him as their savior. Guts would become a villain in the eyes of the world. It's not that Guts cares about public opinion. He's long past such concerns, but it complicates everything. Griffith isn't just another apostle to hunt down. He's a member of the God Hand with near godlike power, protected by an army of demons and humans alike, residing in an impregnable city that serves as a beacon of hope in a dark world. This brings us to where Guts' story currently stands, though currently is complicated, as the manga continues to be published even after its creator Kentaro Miura's passing in 2021, now supervised by his close friend and fellow manga artist Koji Mori. Guts has achieved one of his major goals. Casca's mind has been restored. But this victory is bittersweet, as her restoration has revealed the complexity of their relationship and the depth of their shared trauma. She remembers him, remembers what they had, but she also remembers the Eclipse, and his presence is a trigger for those memories. His companions have become truly important to him. Shiaka, Farnese, Serpico, Isidro, and the others have formed a group that, while different from the band of the Hawk, provides connection and purpose beyond revenge. They remind him that there are still things worth protecting, still reasons to remain human. The Berserker armor continues to take its toll. Each time Guts uses it, he damages his body further. His senses are slowly deteriorating. His bones are covered in micro-fractures. Eventually, if he continues down this path, the armor will kill him. But without it, he cannot face the most powerful threats that stand between him and Griffith. The Beast of Darkness remains a constant presence, always whispering, always waiting for Guts to slip, to lose himself in rage just one more time. It's grown stronger as Guts has used the Berserker armor more frequently. The line between man and monster grows thinner with each battle. And looming over everything is Griffith and his perfect kingdom of Falconia. From Guts' perspective, it's a mockery of everything the Band of the Hawk stood for. It's built on the corpses of his friends, sustained by the very demons they used to fight, ruled by the man who betrayed them all. But from the world's perspective, Falconia represents hope. Griffith has united the fractured kingdoms, ended wars, and provided safety from supernatural threats. He's achieved in reality what he always dreamed of, a kingdom where people can live in peace. This is Guts' current dilemma. His quest for revenge continues, but the path forward is more complicated than simply killing apostles until he's strong enough to face Griffith. He has people depending on him. He has his relationship with Casca to navigate. He has his own humanity to preserve against the armor's corrupting influence. The Skull Knight continues to appear occasionally, offering cryptic advice and warnings. He tells Guts that he's walking the same path he once walked, toward the same dark ending. But he also acknowledges that Guts has something he didn't. Companions who can pull him back from the edge, connections that keep him human. The God Hand watches from beyond, manipulating events according to the flow of causality. They see Guts not as a true threat, but as an interesting anomaly, someone branded for sacrifice who survived, whose continued existence adds tension to the grand narrative they're orchestrating. Femto, formerly Griffith, seems to maintain some connection to his former human life, though exactly how much feeling or memory he retains is unclear. He's acknowledged Guts and their history, but whether that acknowledgement contains anything like regret, or if it's simply intellectual recognition of past events, remains ambiguous. To understand Guts fully, we must understand the themes that define his story. Berserk is not simply an action series with demons and swords. It's a profound exploration of human resilience, the nature of fate, and the struggle to maintain one's humanity in the face of overwhelming darkness. The central theme is struggle itself. Guts is called the struggler because his defining characteristic is his refusal to give up. Not because he's guaranteed to win. In fact, he's fighting against forces that seem impossible to defeat. But because surrender is not in his nature. This struggle exists on multiple levels. There's the physical struggle, the constant battles against apostles and demons drawn to his brand. There's the psychological struggle, fighting the beast of darkness, the trauma of the Eclipse, the weight of survivor's guilt. And there's the philosophical struggle, the fight against causality itself, against a universe that seems designed to ensure his suffering. Guts represents the will to persist, even when persistence seems pointless. In a world controlled by the God Hand, where even tragedies serve a purpose in some grand design, Guts' continued survival and resistance is itself an act of defiance. He refuses to accept the role fate has assigned him as an eternal victim. Another major theme is the cost of revenge. Guts' quest for vengeance has driven him forward, given him purpose when he had nothing else. But it's also consumed him, nearly cost him his humanity, and created distance between him and those who care about him. The Skull Knight serves as a warning of what pure vengeance leads to. An empty existence sustained only by hatred, even after achieving power. Yet Berserk doesn't present revenge as purely negative. Guts' rage is justified. What was done to him and his friends was monstrous. His desire for vengeance is understandable and, in some ways, necessary for his survival. The series explores the complexity of this. How can someone who's been so profoundly wronged move forward? Is forgiveness possible or even desirable in the face of such evil? The series also explores the nature of strength. Guts is physically powerful, capable of feats that seem superhuman even before he acquires the Berserker armor. But his greatest strength isn't his ability to swing the Dragon Slayer. It's his will to keep going. It's his capacity to maintain relationships even when part of him wants to isolate. It's his ability to pull himself back from the brink when the beast threatens to consume him. Conversely, Griffith represents a different kind of strength, the willingness to sacrifice anything for one's goals. He achieved his dream, but only by becoming something inhuman. His strength is his absolute conviction, his refusal to let anything, not love, not friendship, not morality, stand in the way of his ambition. The contrast between Guts and Griffith raises questions about what strength truly means. Is it better to struggle endlessly toward an impossible goal while maintaining your humanity, or to achieve your dreams by abandoning everything that makes you human? The theme of found family is crucial to Guts' development. He's been abandoned and betrayed throughout his life, starting from birth. The Band of the Hawk was the first time he truly belonged somewhere, truly had people who valued him. Losing them nearly destroyed him. His new companions, Puck, Isidro, Farnese, Serpico, Shiaka, represent a second chance at connection. They're not replacements for what he lost, but they're proof that bonds can be formed again, that caring about others isn't just a path to pain. Their presence is what keeps Guts from becoming another Skull Knight, another being sustained only by revenge. Finally, there's the theme of agency versus fate. The God Hand represents absolute determinism, the concept that everything is predetermined by causality. Under this worldview, even rebellion is part of the plan, and free will is an illusion. But Guts' very existence challenges this. He was marked for death at the Eclipse and survived. His continued struggle disrupts the flow of causality in small but significant ways. Whether he has true free will or is simply following a predetermined path of resistance is left ambiguous. But his refusal to accept his fate as inevitable is itself meaningful. The Dragon Slayer, Guts' iconic weapon, deserves special attention because it's become one of the most recognizable swords in all of anime and manga. Its influence extends far beyond Berserk itself. The sword's design is brutally simple. It's more a slab of iron than a refined weapon. There's no elegant craftsmanship, no mystical runes, no legendary heritage. It's just raw metal shaped into a blade. This simplicity is part of its appeal. It represents function over form, practicality over beauty. Many weapons in anime and manga have been inspired by the Dragon Slayer. Cloudstrife's Buster Sword in Final Fantasy VII, the Great Swords in the Dark Souls series, numerous weapons in various fantasy anime. They all owe a debt to Berserk's iconic blade. What makes the Dragon Slayer work as a symbol is that it's perfectly matched to its wielder. Like Guts, it was rejected as impractical, too excessive, a mistake. Like Guts, it found purpose in fighting demons. And like Guts, it's been transformed by the sheer amount of violence it's been involved in, becoming something more than its original creators intended. The sword grows with Guts in a metaphorical sense. In his early battles, he wields it with raw strength but little finesse. Over time, as he fights more demons, he develops techniques specifically for its massive size and weight. He learns to use its width as a shield, its momentum to power through enemies' defenses, its sheer mass to intimidate opponents. When the Dragon Slayer becomes imbued with demonic essence from all the monsters it's killed, it transcends being a simple physical weapon. It can harm beings that exist partially outside physical reality. It can wound members of the God Hand, something that should be impossible for a mortal weapon. This transformation mirrors Guts' own journey. He started as a simple mercenary, skilled but unremarkable in the grand scheme of things. Through his experiences, through his suffering and growth, he's become something more. Not quite human anymore, but not fully demonic either. Something in between, something unique. The Dragon Slayer is described as being too large to be called a sword. It's a heap of raw iron. This description has become iconic, perfectly capturing the weapon's nature. It shouldn't work as a sword. No one should be able to wield it effectively. But in Guts' hands, it becomes one of the most devastating weapons in the Berserk universe. Throughout Guts' journey, the Skull Knight appears at crucial moments, offering guidance and warnings. His relationship with Guts is complex. He's not quite a mentor, not quite an ally, but something between. The Knight sees in Guts a younger version of himself. He too was once human, once loved someone who was taken from him, once fought against the God Hand in rage and pain. But his 1,000-year crusade has left him as something barely human, a soul trapped in armor, sustained by vengeance. His warnings to Guts are consistent. Beware the Berserker armor. Beware losing yourself to revenge. Beware becoming what he became. But he also helps Guts because he recognizes that the younger warrior might succeed where he failed. Guts has companions who care about him, connections that the Skull Knight lost long ago. There's a poignant tragedy to the Skull Knight's character. He's immensely powerful, able to travel between dimensions, to predict the flow of causality to some degree, to forge weapons from behelits that can harm even the God Hand. But what has all that power gained him? His loved ones are still dead. His kingdom is dust. He continues fighting, but for what? When the Skull Knight visits the grave of his lost love, the priestess of the cherry blossoms, we see a rare moment of vulnerability from this ancient warrior. She died during an eclipse-like ceremony 1,000 years ago, marked with the brand of sacrifice, and he's been fighting ever since. But fighting for what? Revenge? Justice? Or simply because he no longer knows how to do anything else? This is the future Guts faces if he doesn't maintain his humanity. The Skull Knight is a warning of what pure vengeance creates, an empty existence where power means nothing because everything worth having is already lost. But the Skull Knight also represents hope in a strange way. Despite everything, despite a millennium of fighting, he's still opposing the God Hand. He hasn't given up. If causality is truly absolute, if fate is predetermined, then what he's doing is meaningless. But he does it anyway, suggesting that the struggle itself has value, even if ultimate victory is impossible. His sword, forged from behelits, those eggs of fate that are used to create apostles and God Hand members, represents an attempt to use the enemy's power against them. He's consumed these artifacts of evil and forged them into a weapon that can cut through the very fabric of reality. When the Skull Knight attempts to strike down Femto, but instead triggers the great wave that merges the physical and astral worlds, creating the conditions for Griffith's kingdom of Falconia to exist, it seems like a terrible failure. His attack was used by Femto to achieve an even greater goal. But this also reveals something important. The God Hand, despite their power and their connection to causality, cannot predict everything. The Skull Knight's interference, even when it doesn't achieve its intended goal, creates ripples in the flow of fate. The outcome might still align with causality's broader pattern, but the specific path is disrupted. This gives meaning to Guts' struggle. Even if he can't ultimately defeat the God Hand, even if his revenge seems impossible, his resistance matters. Every apostle he kills, every person he saves, every time he pulls himself back from becoming a monster. These are victories against a system designed to ensure his suffering. When Casca's mind is finally restored, it represents both a triumph and a new challenge for Guts. For years, protecting her has been one of his primary motivations, a purpose beyond revenge that kept him grounded. But her restoration changes everything. Casca remembers everything now: the Band of the Hawk, the Eclipse, what Femto did to her, and all the trauma associated with those events. And unfortunately, her mind associates Guts with that trauma. Seeing him triggers panic attacks because his scarred face reminds her of the Eclipse, even though he was a victim too. This is heartbreaking for both of them. Guts has been protecting her for years, fighting to restore her mind, and now that he's succeeded, she can't bear to be around him. His very presence causes her pain, reopening wounds that might have begun to heal if he stayed away. The question becomes, what does love mean in the face of this reality? Does Guts' love for Casca mean respecting her need for space, even if it means losing her? Does her trauma invalidate what they had together before the eclipse? Can they ever rebuild a relationship given what they've both been through? There are no easy answers. Casca needs time and space to process her trauma without the constant reminder of it that Guts represents. But Guts is still the person she fell in love with, still the man who's protected her through everything. The connection they had doesn't simply disappear. Farnese's role becomes crucial here. As Casca's primary caretaker, Farnese can provide support and understanding in ways that Guts cannot. The relationship that develops between the two women is important. Farnese finds purpose in caring for Casca, and Casca finds someone who can help her navigate her restored but traumatized mind. This also speaks to larger themes in Berserk about the nature of healing. Trauma doesn't simply disappear when its direct cause is addressed. Restoring Casca's memories doesn't erase what was done to her. Healing is a process, not an event, and it requires time, support, and the ability to process pain in a safe environment. For Guts, this means confronting uncomfortable truths about what he can and cannot do for the person he loves. His strength is useful for fighting demons, but it's useless for healing psychological wounds. His willingness to do whatever it takes can't force Casca to overcome her trauma faster. Sometimes the most loving thing he can do is give her the space she needs, even though it tears him apart to do so. Understanding the full scope of what Guts is fighting against requires examining the God Hand's role in the world. They're not simply powerful demons, but agents of a larger entity. In a chapter that was published but later excluded from the official volumes, Miura revealed the existence of the idea of evil, a godlike entity born from humanity's collective desire to assign meaning to their suffering. While this chapter's canon status is debated among fans, it provides context for understanding the God Hand's motivations and the nature of causality in Berserk's world. Whether or not this specific entity exists as depicted, the God Hand clearly serves some greater purpose beyond their individual desires. According to that controversial chapter, This entity exists in a realm beyond the physical and astral worlds created by humanity's collective unconscious. Their desperate need to believe that their suffering happens for a reason, that there's some greater purpose or plan behind the tragedies they experience. If this depiction is accurate, the entity would feed on suffering while simultaneously creating it, perpetuating a cycle that strengthens its existence. The God Hand serves as executors of causality, orchestrating events in the world to ensure maximum suffering. Whether they answer to the idea of evil specifically or to causality itself as a concept, their role remains the same. They manipulate events to create specific types of suffering that align with humanity's deepest fears and desires. Each member of the God Hand represents a different aspect of human darkness that creates suffering. Void represents the rational evil of those who commit atrocities through logical reasoning. Slan represents the corruption of desire and pleasure. Conrad embodies the suffering of decay and disease. Ubik represents manipulation and the weaponization of hope. And Femto represents ambition without moral limits. Together, they've shaped human history through orchestrated tragedies. The eclipse that created Femto was not the first such ceremony. There have been countless others throughout history. Every 216 years, when conditions are right, a new member can potentially be born. Based on what we see in the manga, Void appears to be the oldest member of the current God Hand, having existed for approximately 1,000 years. A flashback reveals him alongside 4 different inhuman beings during what appears to be an ancient eclipse ceremony. Beings distinct from the current God Hand members. This suggests that Void's ascension may have involved the destruction of an ancient kingdom, which would explain the Skull Knight's particular enmity toward him. The God Hand's influence is subtle and pervasive. They don't typically manifest directly in the physical world. They don't need to. By manipulating causality, they can ensure that events unfold according to their design without direct intervention. Apostles serve as their agents, spreading suffering and chaos that perpetuates the cycle. This creates a horrifying worldview where even acts of resistance and rebellion are predetermined, where even Guts' struggle might be just another planned outcome in an infinite chain of causality. If everything is predetermined, if even free will is an illusion, then what meaning does resistance have? But Berserk doesn't fully commit to absolute determinism. While the God Hand claims to see and manipulate the flow of causality, they've been surprised before. The Skull Knight's interference during the eclipse, while not preventing Femto's birth, did disrupt their plans by saving Guts and Casca. Guts' survival itself is an anomaly. He was marked for death and lived. These small disruptions suggest that while causality might be a powerful force, it's not absolutely binding. There are moments of temporal junction, as the Skull Knight calls them, where the future is genuinely uncertain. These are the moments when direct action can make a difference, can truly alter the course of events, rather than just fulfilling a predetermined role. Griffith's transformation into Femto and his subsequent building of Falconia represents the God Hand's most successful manipulation in the current era. They've created a scenario where their agent is seen as humanity's savior, where opposing him means opposing hope itself. It's a masterful corruption of the natural human desire for safety and meaning. At the heart of Berserk lies the relationship between Guts and Griffith. Two men who were once as close as brothers, now separated by an unbridgeable chasm of betrayal and transformation. Their relationship was always complex. Guts admired Griffith's certainty, his vision, his dream. Griffith valued Guts's strength and his genuine loyalty. But there was also a fundamental incompatibility in how they viewed the world and each other. For Griffith, people were always means to an end. He cared about his followers, yes, but ultimately they served his dream. When the choice came between his dream and his people, he chose the dream. This isn't necessarily a flaw in his character, it's fundamental to who he is. His ambition is all-consuming. For Guts, connections and people were never just tools. He fought for the band because he cared about them, not because they served some larger purpose. His decision to leave wasn't about abandoning them, but about becoming worthy of standing beside them as equals rather than subordinates. The tragedy is that both of them needed each other in ways they didn't fully understand. Griffith needed Guts not just as a warrior, but as someone who could see him as more than just the White Hawk, as a person rather than a symbol. Guts needed Griffith as an anchor, someone whose dream gave his strength purpose. When Guts left, it broke something in Griffith. And when Griffith became Femto, it broke something in Guts. The Eclipse transformed their relationship from complex friendship to absolute enmity. But even now, it's not a simple hatred. Guts hates what Griffith did, hates Femto for the monster he became. But some part of him still remembers the friend he once had, still carries the weight of that lost connection. This is why Casca's presence is so important. She's a living reminder of what was lost, of the family they once had together. For Griffith, Femto, the relationship is more ambiguous. He's achieved his dream, built his kingdom, become effectively a god. But when he encounters Guts again, there are moments that suggest some fragment of human emotion remains. Whether it's nostalgia, acknowledgement, or something else entirely is unclear. The current state of their conflict is asymmetrical. Guts wants revenge, wants to kill Griffith for what he did. Griffith has largely moved beyond their former relationship, focused on maintaining his kingdom and whatever larger role he plays in the God Hand's plans. To Griffith, Guts is a relic of his human past, perhaps even a curiosity, but not a genuine threat. This asymmetry is itself painful. Guts' entire purpose is directed at someone who barely thinks about him anymore. His rage and pain are monumental to him, but largely irrelevant to Griffith. It's yet another way that Guts' suffering seems meaningless in the face of Griffith's ascension. But there's a question that lingers. Does Griffith truly feel nothing for his former comrades? Or does he simply suppress whatever humanity remains within him, because acknowledging it would threaten everything he's built? When the demon child, the offspring of Guts and Casca, corrupted by Femto's assault, becomes the vessel for Griffith's incarnation, does this create a connection between them? These questions remain unanswered, adding layers of complexity to what could otherwise be a simple story of betrayal and revenge. The relationship between Guts and Griffith explores themes of ambition versus compassion, individual dreams versus collective bonds, and the question of whether any goal can justify the means used to achieve it. As the story continues, now being crafted by Koji Mori, based on discussions with the late Kentaro Miura, Guts faces new challenges and uncertainties. With Casca restored but needing space, with his companions growing stronger, but the Berserker armor taking increasing toll on his body, with Griffith's kingdom growing in power and influence, the path forward is unclear. Revenge seems more impossible than ever, yet abandoning it feels like betraying everything he's fought for. The brand on his neck continues to attract demons, ensuring that peace is never truly an option. Even in Elfhelm, where magical protections offer some respite, he knows he'll eventually have to return to a world where every night brings the threat of attack. His companions offer support, but they also represent responsibilities. He's not just fighting for revenge anymore, but also protecting people who depend on him. This gives him purpose beyond destruction, but it also means his actions affect more than just himself. The Berserker armor continues to be both blessing and curse. It gives him the power to face threats he couldn't otherwise defeat, but it's slowly killing him and risks consuming what remains of his humanity. Each time he uses it, Shirka has to dive deeper into his consciousness to bring him back, and each time it gets harder. The beast of darkness waits, always hungry, always patient. It knows that eventually Guts will slip. Eventually the armor will take over completely. Eventually he'll become the monster it represents. Guts' constant battle against this inner darkness is as important as any external fight. And looming over everything is the question of what ultimate victory would even look like. Even if Guts could somehow kill Griffith, would that bring back his friends? Would it heal Casca's trauma? Would it erase the brand and stop the nightly attacks? Or would it simply be meaningless violence that changes nothing? These are the questions Guts grapples with as his journey continues. His story is not about achieving a clear, heroic victory, but about maintaining one's humanity and purpose in the face of overwhelming darkness. It's about choosing to struggle even when struggle seems pointless, to care even when caring brings pain, to remain human even when becoming a monster would be easier. So this is Guts, born from death, raised in violence, shaped by betrayal, marked for eternal suffering, and yet he endures. He's called the struggler not because he's guaranteed to win, but because he refuses to stop fighting. Against demons, against the God Hand, against fate itself, he struggles onward. His story is one of the most compelling in all of manga because it doesn't offer easy answers or comfortable solutions. Guts doesn't get to simply overcome his trauma and live happily. His pain is real, lasting, and some of it will never heal. But he continues anyway. The dragon slayer on his back is more than a weapon, it's a symbol of his will. Too large, too heavy, supposedly impossible to wield. And yet he carries it, swings it, uses it to carve a path forward through impossible odds. His relationships with his companions show that even someone as damaged as Guts can still connect with others, can still care, can still be human. Shirke, Farnese, Isidro, Serpico. They've become important not because they replace what he lost, but because they prove that new bonds can be formed, that life can continue even after tragedy. And Casca, despite the complications and pain, represents hope. Her restoration shows that healing, while difficult and incomplete, is possible. Their relationship might never be what it once was, but that doesn't mean it has no future. It just means the future will be different than either of them imagined. The God Hand and Griffith remain as seemingly insurmountable obstacles. But that's the point. Guts' struggle isn't about probability of success. It's about the refusal to surrender to despair. It's about maintaining agency in a world that tries to deny it. It's about choosing to be human even when humanity seems like a weakness. His story resonates because many people understand what it means to feel overwhelmed by circumstances beyond their control, to carry trauma that never fully heals, to struggle against odds that seem impossible. Guts represents the will to persist, even when persistence seems pointless, to maintain one's humanity, even when becoming heartless would be easier. The Black Swordsman walks his path not because he's guaranteed victory, but because the alternative, giving up, giving in, becoming what the world tried to make him, is unacceptable. Every step forward is an act of defiance. Every moment he resists the beast of darkness is a victory. Every connection he maintains is proof that darkness doesn't have to win. This is the story of Guts, the Black Swordsman, the struggler, a man born from death who refuses to die, a warrior marked by fate who defies destiny, a human pushed to the edge who chooses, again and again, to step back from that edge and keep fighting. His journey isn't over. The struggle continues, and as long as he draws breath, as long as he can grip the Dragon Slayer, as long as some spark of humanity remains, he will keep moving forward, because that's what it means to be the struggler. Good night.